Ice hockey is starting to take a hold in the Northern Territory after the Arafura Games, when there were 3 really important exhibition matches. This is what they play with. They're called pucks. They're made from rubber, and I can only tell you that they look so dangerous and they feel very, very hard. Now, a man who would know more about these babies than me is a man by the name of JFK. John F. Kennedy. He's from the United States. He's been brought out to Australia to play, lives in Newcastle, but he's in Darwin doing some coaching, and he joins me. John, what brought you to Darwin, firstly?
The ice rink. So I called up Jeff one time. I think I saw a Facebook post about an ice rink being built in Darwin. And, you know, with the company that we have, NSA, we run an ice hockey academy, and, you know, Darwin, why not? And I think the message said looking for coaches. And so I just kind of threw out my resume and had a, discussion. And then probably a couple days later, got a call from Jeff, and everything happened from there.
Probably in your young days when you were playing in the United States, you never ever thought Australia, and certainly if you had a thought Australia, you probably never would have thought Darwin.
Oh, look, no one could have told me, like, during my college years, in a million years, that I would be coming to Australia playing ice hockey, let alone coaching, starting a family or anything. Never would have thought about it.
Well, let's talk about your young life, but before we do, when you look at one of these things, what do you think about?
A lot of things. I think of joy. I think of pain. I think of regrets. I've scored a lot of goals in my career. I've witnessed those going into the net. I've blocked a couple of them. Some that I intentionally meant to block. Some that came flying at my face, and I didn't mean to block it then. But I've had broken bones, busted lips, and everything that you can name. So. Yeah, the puck has a lot of memories for me.
We'll talk more about that in a moment. But just playing in the United States as a young person, what are your earliest memories of this great game? Because I've got to say I'm hooked on it, but what are your memories?
Oh, look, when I was a kid, I was a fast-paced kid. And my mom and dad were kind of just looking for something to keep me active. And there was a TV commercial that, had some hockey on there. And so I kept bugging my dad to just take me skating. And after, going skating for a bit, I saw a hockey game right after, and someone got slammed right in front of me. Now, in a lot of the rinks in the States, they have glass as well. So here you have a lot of netting, but someone got slammed in the glass in front of me. I'm like, Dad, what's that? He's like, it's hockey. And ever since, because I'm from Michigan, and it's a cold region, the lakes freeze over during the winters. So that means I can go outside and skate. And I just love it. Just the pace of, you're just flying, you can feel the wind in your face. There's skill, there's grit, there's so many things about it. So.
And what are the competing sports that would have been trying to get you to play for them?
Oh, look, you have, gridiron, or what we call football. You have soccer, baseball, and other different sports. But yeah, I gravitated towards hockey.
And no regrets?
No regrets, absolutely none.
Did you play at, what's the highest level you played at?
So the highest level I played was professional, and that was, so you have the National Hockey League, which is the top tier. Then you have a league underneath that, which is considered AAA, and I ended up playing AA hockey.
Okay. Could you have gone on better to AAA and...
Oh, look, if I would have stuck with it, I wouldn't say that I could. But look, it's tough. Yeah. It's really tough. So along with having the skill and the talent and the work ethic that goes along with it, there's also a little bit of luck involved, getting seen by the right person. So.
I'm sure there is. How big is the sport in the United States and Canada?
Oh, it's massive. Like, for Canada, it's pretty much their national sport. And they live, eat, sleep, breathe it. And same thing in the States. It is pretty big there, and you're noticing hockey's growing into warmer climate regions. Like when it comes down to your northern states like New York, Michigan, Minnesota, hockey is very prevalent there. But you're hearing kids come from Arizona, from Florida, from Texas. So the game is growing, plus you're getting more expansion teams. We recently had a team in Las Vegas added to the National Hockey League, and then there's also a team going to join in a year or two in Seattle. So
and the sport is growing in Australia, getting bigger, but that's because they start to recruit people like you. So there have been a lot of players from the States that have actually come out to Australia.
Yes, so I now I coach in the Australian Ice Hockey League, and it's pretty much our national competition. You have a team in Newcastle, 2 teams in Sydney, 1 in Canberra, 2 teams in Melbourne, Adelaide, and Perth. And you travel to all these cities and you play, and it is a high level. And like you said, we're allowed to have 6 imports signed to a team at one point, but only 4 are allowed to be rostered on for the game. And just by having players that have been drafted in the NHL, have played AA, some guys even AAA hockey in the US and Canada, some guys from Europe, it just adds that element of, high-level hockey. So it brings the overall level up.
Gee, and the game itself is just so exhilarating to watch and aggressive as well. I mean, there's no beg your pardons in the game.
Oh, no. Because you're going so fast, you're going to bump. And, check-in is a part of it. So I figured a lot of Australians will like the aggressive side of it, kind of like gridiron or AFL, or rugby and AFL. But, you have rules to protect players, but at the end of the day, like you said, it's a lot of speed when you have, steel on ice just going up and down. And,
And then there's this block of humanity that stands in the goals. That's the goalkeeper. You've got to try and get past.
Oh, look, it's difficult to get it past them, and people may say all those pads is a small net, but when you look at the puck in comparison to the net and the goalie equipment, there are plenty of spaces that you can shoot the puck into the net. But if you're trying to block that thing, you want a lot of padding.
Now, we got some taste of it, of course, during the Arafura Games, with 3 matches being played here between the Territory Tigers Sharks and the visiting Boomerangs team from Adelaide or from South Australia that came up. But I noticed one thing that seemed a little bit surprising to me. There were some women playing in the Territory Tiger Sharks team. So does that happen often, where women actually play in the same team as the men?
In some of your in-house or rec leagues, you'll have mixed gender, so you can have guys and girls, but usually they kind of keep them separated after around the ages of 16. So as you're growing up, U11, U13, you can have mixed groups, but as kids hit puberty and guys start getting filling out, then usually it is separate. But going back to the States and Canada, they have their professional leagues on both sides. So for both men and for women, you can play professionally and play ice hockey.
And what's the prize money? We know in tennis in recent times the equal prize money has happened, but I understand that in the United States and Canada it didn't come easy.
Oh, it hasn't been easy at all. And it's breaking old stereotypes and breaking that gender gap and closing it down. But I know the U.S. women's team, they boycotted participating in the Winter Olympics until they had equal pay. And fortunately enough for them, pretty much they answered. USA Hockey answered to their demands, and that women team did win. So not only are they saying, hey, we put in the same amount of time, we sacrifice time with our families, but they play at a very high level too. They're just as good. So I know they don't play as much as a contact game, but even though it's non-contact for women compared to men's, they still bump around too a lot.
And your journey in Australia, because you now live in Newcastle,
yes,
and that's where you come from to be here, but what about your journey in Australia? How did you finish up in Newcastle?
So my first year in the AIHL, the Australian Ice Hockey League, I played for Canberra. So back then they were called the Canberra Knights, and me and a buddy we heard about it, and we heard that there's ice hockey in Australia, so we were like, oh, okay, cool, let's check it out. And we came here, had a blast. I had a blast in Canberra during the winter, which some people kind of find hard, but I absolutely enjoyed the city. But before I went back home, I did a coastal trip from the Gold Coast down to Sydney. I hired a wicked camper van with a buddy and was just able to travel and see, all the amazing beaches and the beautiful land. And I just knew that this is kind of a place I wanted to be here longer than just 4 or 5 months for the season. So decided that I was going to stay, called up a different team, the Newcastle team, because I ended up going past Newcastle on my way to Sydney, and it's gorgeous, beautiful beaches. And for me, coming from Michigan, I'm not used to seeing things like that, at least not that close. So it was an easy decision. I was young and single, so decided to stay in Newcastle.
So you coach teams and individuals, but you coach coaches as well. That's what you're doing in Darwin. Tell us about that.
That's the major thing for us. If our whole mantra is, grow the game, whether that's helping players, whether that's bringing more awareness to ice hockey. But the biggest thing is helping coaches be able to develop players. Because if I impart my knowledge and share with other coaches, well then that means more players are going to get better coaching. And I realize a lot of players that jump into the sport, they're first generation players. So dad really doesn't know how to teach them. Dad doesn't know how to take him on the back and shoot a puck properly. So if we can help the coaches that are teaching the players, I feel like we'll be able to reach more players. And if more players understand the game more and they're having fun and they're developed the proper way, well, they're going to have more fun playing because they know they're doing things right. They're going to have more success. They're going to score more goals with those pucks, and they're going to want to be on the ice more often.
And here, of course, the first time we saw an Indigenous team playing here at the Arafura Games, and you would have known the skill and ability of Indigenous sportsmen and women. What are the chances and the futures for Indigenous people who want to play this game?
Any rink they want to go to, they can go there and be a part of it. You know, I think pretty much every rink has some type of learn to play ice hockey. So it takes you from off the street to how to put your skates on to how to hold a stick to all the rules. So, I mean, when you look at the game, sometimes it gets intimidating. It's like, oh, I could never play that. But in all honesty, you just learn how to skate and then you just go from there.
Sounds easy. I'm not sure that it is. But great to see you here, and thanks for contributing to the Territory way of life and encouraging young people to be ice hockey players and skaters and to be coaches as well. Thanks for doing that.
No, thank you, Charlie. Love it up here.